Darlene was born into a family where love was a way of life, kindness was practiced, and knowing was welcome. So after an amazing journey full of twists and turns, she was led to Cassadaga and became an SCSCMA certified medium and spiritual healer. Darlene believes that by being aware of loved ones in spirit has allowed her to feel new gifts of new freedoms and abilities and to expand and share these gifts God has given to her. She believes that we all are meant to be joyous, and she lives her life in a way that allows her to share her joy with others in everything that she does. Please join me in welcoming Darlene McCormick. Yay!
Oh, she always makes me sound so wonderful. Hey, everybody.
Hi, Darlene.
Hey, everybody. Let's get that energy up there. Look, I'm already making a mess of these papers. When somebody walks up with a whole ration of papers, do you think, oh, dear Lord, this is going to be all day? It won't be. You know, Cynthia, your meditation was marvelous. And I particularly like that, how do you want to grow? I want to grow with love, I want to grow with joy, and I want to just grow with you. And I am so grateful to be here in Colby Memorial Temple because this is my safe place. You've heard me say it before. And I am honored to be on the same path with each of you today. Because we are, for this moment, February 8th, Super Bowl Sunday, we are on the same path. Cynthia and I also did the Wednesday message service together this past week. And while we were before the service, we were speaking of what we would like to speak of. Cynthia is speaking next Sunday, and she has a very interesting topic I will not disclose, but I'll be here, so keep it in mind. Of course, at that time on Wednesday, I was in my usual monkey mind mode, where I was considering a bazillion things to discuss and cover, full of emotions, and clarity actually seeped in when Cynthia just looked at me and said, honor your emotions. I thought, well, I have been overwhelmed lately, so here we go. This is going to be a Darlene, just a raw talk. Last fall, I spoke of navigating life, my perspective. And when I finished, I had an immediate sense that there was more to be said about that topic, that it needed to be expanded upon. So I listened to the universe, and we're just going to have at it. Because last fall, I addressed self-speak. That was covered a little bit in meditation as well. And how we speak to and think of ourselves determines how we feel about ourselves and others. I touched on how the manner in which humans speak to each other can flavor another's self-speak. Sometimes we're just so mean to each other. Not always. I'm talking about the anomaly. Generally, we do turn towards love. Generally, we do turn towards joy. But in this human experience, we are experiencing some very chaotic moments. Y'all may have noticed there's been some chaos. Numerologically, I had to practice that word. That's a hard one. Numerologically, these last 2 years, one being 2025 and one being 2026, have been an incredible and intense time. We have lots of those throughout our lives, lots of intense times, and each generation feels their stuff is the worst. So, the year 2025 adds up to be a 9-year. Numerology states that we go in 9-year cycles for this example. And 2026 adds up to be a 10, which then distills down to a 1 year. Now, last year was filled with chaos preceding change. Many of the things that we thought were going to be forever began to close up and to shift. And some of the adventures that we thought we were on the right path towards, we suddenly started to turn in a different direction, free will and choice. Do some of you feel like 2025 is following you like a dark shadow into 2026? I see some head nods. I'm not alone. You're never alone. Here, you're never alone. You're never alone wherever you are. And remember that change is always uncomfortable for us, and yet it is so necessary. Give it a hot minute. Just give it a minute. Sort through the actual change, not the emotions surrounding it. Let it unfold, and many of you will start to find at this point in this new year that it's making sense. May not have been what you asked for, but it is what you are getting, and you're suddenly seeing that there is merit in this change. I've kind of taken it to a radical step. I'm going to re-celebrate the new year with the Chinese on February 17th in order to better welcome those changes that are coming through and to put my trust and faith in God, universe, spirit, whatever name that you refer, whatever you are comfortable with, just give it over. That's the end of the pep talk portion. So, we're going to talk about research. You can't have, a talk without some sort of research. Honoring your feelings and emotions. It is stated in one source that to honor your emotions is to first acknowledge, validate, and allow yourself those feelings. Allow them. Whether positive or negative, no judgment. Don't label it. Humans, we have to label everything. Don't label it positive. Don't label it negative. Let it unfold. Treat yourself with kindness and understand that emotions are just signals rather than a weakness, and let them pass. Here's the key. This is where I didn't get to last year. Without letting them boss you around. I hate to be bossed around. I have been slapped around by some anger that I've been feeling lately, and it's gotten darned uncomfortable, as I am not comfortable in that particular position. That's one of the reasons why I'm focusing on it today, because I'm just going to lay it out there and dissect it, and hopefully we'll come around to a closure point where it won't be so prominent for just this moment. So here's one of my repeats: without letting it boss you around. I love it when research presents itself in a way that sounds so easy and yet is not easy. To continue, there are recommendations of how to deal with overwhelming emotion. We're just going to go through them quick. First, pause and recognize the feeling. Then name the emotion. Humans, as I said, love to label. Stop self-judgment. Sit in the feeling and let it unfold. Let it unfold. We sometimes just bulldoze through life. We don't let things just unfold. The universe is taking care of us, and yet we're arguing with God. I like to argue with God sometimes. I am so human. Express then and process. Breathe. Find what works for you. Practice compassion for yourself and for others. Now, these steps can generate and become a powerful act of self-respect, leading to emotional regulation. And in this particular source, which happened to be Dr. Jill Taylor, that would be regulation, restraint, and resilience. Dr. Taylor goes on to suggest that the body's initial chemical response only lasts for 90 seconds. That's a long time to just sit quietly and let it unfold. I'm looking to make this just a shorter thing because, I like instant done, 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 done. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's how I approach it. So it can be a long time, particularly when you're dealing with the hardest emotions to control and process, which are anger, fear, shame, and guilt. That's about where I left off last year. So why is anger, fear, shame, and guilt so difficult? It's because they're intensely primal. When you bravely stepped back into the world of people, with your God part completely intact, you're slammed into a human body that then you must gain understanding of, control of, how to make it even carry your soul around. It's a lot. And it is done every day on a daily basis from the time we were born until the time we draw our last breath here and renew ourselves on our next adventure. So primal, so human, and because of that, they can also be tied to one's self-perception. Most of us have the way we perceive ourselves. You know, I am this, I am that, I am Darlene Mary. Generally, I'm joyous, but when I'm not, it's absolutely awful, and I don't like it. So one's self-perception can lead to irrational behavior, making it harder to handle, making that anger harder to handle. Anger is especially difficult because it's an explosive. It has an explosive nature. While fear can override logic and guilt and shame can be hidden, but remember, tamping down guilt and shame does not let it go. It remains debilitating as long as you hold on to whatever it was that caused you to feel that emotion at that moment when you decide to stuff it down with all the other things that you've chosen to not look at, to stuff down. So debilitating, and that's according to many, many sources. I'm sure many of us here have anger difficulties, either around us or we're just uncomfortable with it. Confrontation's always a tough one. And you know family and friends who actually struggle with it. It's not hard. And it can be struggles that are just continuing on an ongoing basis. As I had mentioned, I have been struggling. Remember earlier statement about emotions? I really like this. Don't let them boss you around. Hold on to your faith and take comfort in the knowledge that you have free will and choice. So the science behind recurring emotional difficulties, it references a part of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala portion acts as an emotional alarm when one of these primal emotions affect you, when you're angered, when you're fearful. And remember that we have a lifetime of experiences and triggers that just lay right under the surface, waiting for something to remind you of it, to trigger it, and then you do a repeat. Hold, repeat, hold, repeat. And anger from the amygdala can cause and does cause an incredible adrenaline rush. And this part I found really interesting. This is why I needed to continue this, because it releases a flood of adrenaline to the prefrontal cortex. I looked at pictures. It's an amazing thing, the brain. This is the part of the brain, the prefrontal lobe, that is responsible for logic and impulse control. So that adrenaline rush makes it physically even harder to think rationally. Now, when you think of this adrenaline rush, think of it along the lines that it is hijacking a part of your brain, the part of your brain that is actually logical. Most interesting, and it was a little scary to me too, is that this powerful biological surge can become addictive over time. It becomes your go-to. The rush makes our brain and ego feel powerful, making it harder to let go, no matter how inappropriate the exhibited behavior is. And as we talked last fall, remember, anger often serves as a protective mask for the more vulnerable feelings like fear and shame and powerlessness. Focusing anger outward, the brain avoids the intense pain of these deeper, quieter emotions. Given all that information, are you or someone you care becoming dependent on a primal response to a trigger from a long time ago, just to avoid the real issue? So we're going to get into that now. Let's go inside this frail human body and find alternative response methods to deal with the areas of your life that aren't working as you deserve them to. It requires work, self-awareness to prevent your emotions and old emotional responses from that bossing you around. It always comes down to my take on this. Well, quite clearly, I have been angry, and observing the world has made me more so. I've allowed fear to place the mask of anger onto my more important underlying emotions. I had forgotten an important, a very important gift from God: free will and choice. And that forgetfulness, that little bit of forgetfulness that I forgot about free will and choice, that was ticking me off even more. And I thank God for placing me here this week to study and investigate with you, and hopefully for you, how to deal and how to grow. How do we want to grow in this lifetime? Who do we want to be? Anger and fear are not negative. It's simply a very difficult human emotion. The research showing that emotions can hijack the brain concerned me, as I mentioned. Knowing that there are physiological reasons for this may allow one to use that knowledge as a crutch or excuse to repeat unacceptable behaviors. I do not want that for myself or for anyone else. To me, we are meant to evolve. Today allows me that room to move forward. And I will not allow past life experiences to taint my bright future. Don't allow your past difficult experiences to taint your bright future. There is so much more joy that is contained within the lifetime, but because a couple of these emotions are so primal and difficult, we forget the good part. If you pick something up ugly and turn it 1/4 of an inch, there'll be seeds of joy coming off the thing. You just don't expect it to, because you've internalized it so much and you're so sure that it went. You have your story. I have my story. I have my story. Let go of the story if it's not serving you well. So anger and fear can be suppressed, converted, redirected. That isn't the way I want to go, because it could place me in danger of turning the anger inwards, causing possible physical harm. Your blood pressure rises. It just automatically does when you're very emotional. So turning it outward places me then in a different situation, places me in its raw form, and can cause me embarrassment and shame. So, I'm making a stand. I will do the work. When I feel an emotional trigger, I will look at it and discern, is this new? Is this old? Am I just being the same old reactionary human? With a soul housed in this body, I want to grow and expand and be bigger and better than that. I will pause and recognize the feeling. I will observe the trigger and discern if it no longer is valid or if it's just a part of my past, just a bleep in my past. I will not turn the anger inward, and I will not judge it. I will have the courage to step into it, breathe through it, and allow it to unfold. I will express and process this anger or fear for what it is in the clarity of a brief moment that I may have to do that. Just in that moment, a brief moment, to see what is important for that moment. Because it's not life-changing, it's a part of life. All of this a part of life. I will speak to myself and others in an assertive, not aggressive way. Outlining boundaries can be extremely hard for many of us, and boundaries are just simply peace of mind. Things that you will do, things that you are unable to do, things you are unwilling to do. Look at what those truly are. Let them internalize, let those positive emotions internalize and boot out the negative ones. I will have the courage, this is my hardest one, I will have the courage to reach out and ask for help. I hate to ask for help. Anybody else hate to ask for help? Man, I will struggle with a pickle jar for an hour with somebody in the next room who could open it. It doesn't matter why, I'm gonna stop it. My hands just hurt. So, in closing, just think along these lines with me. I will walk in the power of self-respect with the grace of God. With this love, evolving in this way, as in accordance with God's natural laws, which I so value. Let me repeat that. I will walk in the power of self-respect with the grace of God, with this love evolving in this way in accordance with God's natural law that I love. Walk with me, everyone. If you take one thing away from today, may it allow you also to walk with grace, dignity, and self-respect. May we free ourselves from that emotional baggage which brings us down, which holds us back, which keeps us stuck. And more importantly, that no longer serves us well. I feel a lot better. Thank you.